Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Caelan Doris podcast. Back in your ears for a jam-packed 2025. We'll have Six Nations, we'll have Lions Tour, we'll have Champions Cup, URC, Women's World Cup, Women's Six Nations, Under 26 Nations, and all that yet to come. But first, we will start with the annual Guinness Men's Six Nations Championship, which is just around the corner. Earlier on today, interim head coach Simon Easterby named his 36-man squad for this year's championship. And on today's show, I will run you through the squad itself, the training panel, the major selections, the major omissions, and so much more on a day of national discourse and national controversy. We will start things, as always, by looking at the squad itself. And for those of you who are joining us on YouTube, you can actually just catch it here. It'll be up on screen in just a moment. But the Ireland squad is as follows. Starting off at loosehead prop with Andrew Porter, Cian Healy, and the uncapped Leinsterman Jack Boyle. Hooker sees a return for Dan Sheehan alongside Rona Kelleher, Gus McCarthy, and Ulster's Rob Herring. Tadhg Furlong, Finlay Bealham, and Tom Clarkson are the tight head props. Second row includes Joe McCarthy, Tadhg Byrne, James Ryan, Ian Henderson, and Ryan Baird. The back row features Peter O'Mahony, Cian Prendergast, Jack Conan, Cormac Izuchukwu, Josh van der Fleer, and Caelan Doris. At scrum half, we have James Gibson Park, Conor Murray, and Keelan Blade. At out half, it is Jack Crowley, Sam Prendergast, and Kieran Frawley. Just three centres this time around with no Stuart McCluskey, so it's Bundy Aki, Robbie Henshaw, and Gary Ringrose. The back three features Matt Hansen, James Lowe, Calvin Nash, Jimmy O'Brien, Jamie Osborne, and Hugo Keenan. And there is a training panel named in the squad as well, in the form of Hugh Cooney, Cathal Ford, James McNabney, and Ben Murphy. It is a squad that has taken an awful lot of hits in just the 8 hours, less than 8 hours since it was named from the time of recording. Going to run through it all. We're going to look at the omissions. For those of you on YouTube, you would have seen there the likes of Tom Hearn, Drew Postlethwaite, Ollie Jaeger, and so on and so forth in the omissions list. But running through the squad, I think the most high profile inclusion is probably that of Dan Sheehan, who comes back in after injury to his knee, his ligaments in his knee back in July in the tour of South Africa. That one, it's great to see him back. You do hope, obviously, that he's not rushed and so on and so forth. But it is great to see him back in the fold and back amongst the Ireland squad. Tadhg Furlong is also back from injury as well, albeit he played at the weekend. The scrum half then, Keelan Blade gets the nod as Craig Casey is out through injury. Jacob Stockdale, Sean McCluskey, they also miss out. So there's a lot of, I'm not going to say big calls in there, but there's a couple of individual ones that you could definitely look at. The loosehead props, as I said, Andrew Porter, Cian Healy, and Jack Boyle. Jack Boyle, not a surprise selection. He's been someone you've kind of seen coming from a while out. Cian Healy, obviously Ireland's most capped player, and Andrew Porter, probably Ireland's most important player. You would expect Cian Healy to be on the bench for maybe 4 of those 5 games, maybe give Jack Boyle a run out against either Wales or against Italy. But it's okay. Obviously the Tom O'Toole experiment put on hold with his suspension. Jeremy Luckman is injured. Even if they want to look at someone like Michael Milne, he's injured as well. So Jack Boyle gets his chance with Healy and Porter ahead of him. It is likely to be Cian Healy's last championship. I don't think anyone could begrudge him this one last chance at a medal. Already one of Ireland's most decorated players, if not Ireland's most decorated player. But as I said, probably the most important player in that Ireland squad is Andrew Porter. If he's not available, if referees decide to look at the scrum differently, Ireland are going to be in an awful lot of trouble. That's just the reality to it, really, because he's just that important, isn't he? Like, he is so important to what Ireland want to do, both at set piece and at the breakdown and as well, carrying the ball and in tight exchanges. I think probably the return of Tadhg Furlong is probably bigger, however, because, and I'll come back to Hooker in a minute, because in the autumn, Ireland probably looked a little bit undersized in the pack. Some of that is Furlong. His ability to be a power athlete, obviously from tight head prop, but to be a power forward, is very important to Ireland. But again, at ruck work, at defensive stoppages and all that, Finlay Bealham and Tom Clarkson behind him, there was definitely scope for looking elsewhere. Scott Wilson's been in good form for Ulster. As I said, Tom O'Toole suspended. You could have looked at Ollie Jaeger, for example. Can't argue with these three. A lot of people expected four tight head props to be named, but they stick with three. They're obviously very confident in Tyke Furlong's fitness. So Furlong beat him, you would imagine. That'll be the 1-2 there with Clarkson getting minutes. Hooker is probably where it gets interesting. Some people would have had Kelleher, McCarthy, Herring. Some would have had Sheehan, Kelleher, McCarthy, or Sheehan, Kelleher, Herring. It all depended on fitness and availability and so forth. So Rob Herring has not played a huge pile of minutes this season. Obviously, as I said, Dan Sheehan has missed the entire season so far, but Rob Herring just three appearances at the time of recording for Ulster this year. One off the bench, two starts. It's not a huge amount. You would be a little bit concerned there. You'd be concerned about Dan Sheehan. Maybe there was scope for looking elsewhere. Maybe you go with, say, Jimmy Barron or Dave Heffernan as a kind of stopgap. But obviously Ireland confident that if they just go with one more, that'll be enough. We'll wait and see on that one. We could yet see call-ups there. Porter, Sheehan, Furlong will be the three starters if fit. Healy, Kelleher, Bean will probably be the three on the bench if fit. Kelleher's form is really good. He'll deserve that starting spot. He's likely to start against England in round one. The main reservation I would have, though, is Keane Healy and Finlay Bealham for all they've done well in green. They have struggled at set piece time in recent exchanges, both in the autumn, but particularly in July down in South Africa. So it'll be really interesting to see how they go. Very tough matchups for them. Um, with obviously England and France in there. Scotland, not a bad scrummaging team compared to where they used to be, especially with Xander Ferguson probably doing the majority of the heavy lifting there, figuratively and quite literally. So it's still a good squad. I don't think anyone would deny them that. It's still a very, very good squad that Ireland have put together in the front row. Moving into the second row then, Joe McCarthy, Tyke Byrne, James Ryan, Ian Henderson, Ryan Baird. You could add Cormac Izuchukwu in there. If you wanted to, I think they'll look at Izuchukwu at six. I could be wrong. I feel like Ulster may look at him second row, but that's a different conversation. It would appear that the starting second row pairing will be Joe McCarthy and James Ryan with Tyke Byrne at blindside flanker. That to me is probably one area that I wouldn't be overly impressed with. I think it's fair to say I don't think it's something that has been working for essentially quite some time now at this stage. Um, Byrne did well in the South African tour, obviously against South Africa on that South African tour, but it's just the idea of moving Tyke Byrne there is to give Ireland a little bit more power. McCarthy and Ryan with Byrne behind them, and give Byrne a little bit more freedom. But you're not gaining a huge amount in power. You're probably not gaining anything more in mobility. So for me, as tough and all of a decision as it is, I'd probably either go McCarthy, Ryan with Izuchukwu at six, or Byrne and Ryan with Izuchukwu at six. That's just my own personal flavour. Ian Henderson's form has been up and down. He's had a lot of injuries. This is tail end of his career. He's played a lot of minutes. And Ryan Baird, who I think Ireland will look at him as the next man up at second row. But for me, I think six probably suits him better. I don't think his ruck work, his line out work is very, very solid. I'll give him that. And I'll do a comparison between himself and Thomas Ahern in a minute. His line out work is really, really good. I don't think his phase play work, his breakdown work, his defensive work is as strong as say his Chuku or Ahern. But I think Ireland would prefer to see him at second row, or at least back to a 6-2 bench with him involved there. I think we are very likely to see 6-2 bench return with Jack Crowley on the bench. Again, one that I'll get into a little bit later on. For me, I just think McCarthy, Ryan, you're obviously losing a little bit of the line out time, and any Ireland team that doesn't have Peter Manny since 2011, 2012, whenever team had his debut, 2012, I think it was, is not as strong at set piece. That's just the reality of it. He's one of the best set piece operators Ireland have ever produced. So it's certainly a risk if you go with Byrne. Well, less of a risk if you go with Byrne at six or Manny at six, but certainly a risk insofar as are you losing out in the overall game plan in how all that works? I think you probably are. James Ryan's in fantastic form. Joe McCarthy played very well against La Rochelle in the first half, particularly. Second half probably faded out a little bit, probably knowing that Jorge Snyman was going to get a half an hour, 25 minutes, whatever it was. Um, But Ryan, I think, is the nail on starter. Burns' form up and down. Very good against Saracens the weekend. I feel like we're going to see him at six. And on that, I think we're going to see Van der Fleer and Doris nailed on. Doris is captain, Van der Fleer in groundbreaking form. I think I said at the weekend, feels like every game since the New Zealand game in November that Van der Fleer and Doris have been the two best players, Irish or Leinster, on the field every week. I don't think that's a controversial statement. They've been in such good form together. Some of that is just how the game has evolved and in terms of Leinster's game plan and being more defensive focused. But I do still have reservations. As good as Van der Fleer has been, as good as Doris has been, I'm not sure if Byrne is the right man. I think I'd prefer to go as Duke myself or even go back to O'Mahony because as much as Peter O'Mahony will get pelters, played well against Australia off the bench, played well against the Maori All Blacks or New Zealand next week for Munster. If we see him this weekend, I would not be surprised if we see another brilliant Peter O'Mahony performance because although the injuries are piling up and he's playing less games, he's still providing a very effective service. Keane Prendergast, Jack Conan, and Cormac Izuchuku, as I mentioned, are also there. Prendergast was out of some people's squad. He was out of my squad originally. I can see why he's in there. Connacht captain. He's had a good year as Connacht captain. My only concern is I look at O'Mahony, Prendergast, Conan, Izuchuku, Doris, Baird as well, Byrne. It's all very samey. It like a lot of very similar caliber players, not just in terms of ability or a rating if you're to use kind of FIFA parlance, but just all very similar. I'd have preferred to get in a Kendellan who's more of a like for like for Van der Fleer, for instance. Obviously Tom Ahern, who I mentioned, and Tom Ahern or Thomas Ahern, probably the notable absentee from this Ireland squad. And I'm just gonna get a piece. I have a piece here on Rugby Pass whose stats work is really good, really good. I'm just gonna throw it up here for anyone who can see it. I don't know if it's working. There it is. So Ryan Baird against Thomas Ahern this season in the URC. Look, Thomas Ahern has played a little bit more games, but it is remarkable how much stronger he's been. Better tackle success rate, more tries, that doesn't really matter. Line breaks doesn't really matter. Not a huge amount of, carries per minutes, carries difference. More meters made, massively more meters made from Thomas Ahern. Now, it should be said, Ryan Baird, getting a lot of touches, getting a lot of post-contact meters. When he makes a break, he makes a very strong break. Defensively, though, this is more what I was talking about here. Thomas Ahern, more tackles, better tackles completed, more tackles per minutes. Ruck arrival effectiveness is really good. His ruck work is really solid. And the thing what a lot of people will tell you about Thomas Ahern is, well, he's playing out in the wing. He's a little bit lost out there. He's not getting involved. He's being used as an edge forward though, and what you will see then, if Ireland were to go with this, and I think the Ireland Fiji game proved to me that Ireland have gone away from edge forwards. No Sheehan, they didn't do it. They couldn't know with Chuku, they didn't do it. But an edge forward will help you win those outside rucks. Now Ireland are blessed to have Hugh Keenan, whose ruck work is phenomenal for a fullback, so he can cover that ground very well. But for me, like I find it baffling that Thomas Ahern isn't in the squad. There will be people who say, well, he was on the bench. Well, Andrew Porter was on the bench against La Rochelle. Like, we can't just use that. Like, Jack Conan was on the bench against La Rochelle as well. Keane Healy obviously started, but he only played 20 minutes against La Rochelle. Leinster's biggest game of the season, these lads are only getting 20 minutes. It should not be something to take away from Thomas Ahern. I do not understand the rationale. Like, I've it listed here of the squad sizes of the Six Nations squads. England have 36, same as Ireland. Scotland have 37. France have 42. There's no number. There's no cap. There's nothing like that. If Ireland wanted to go with a 37-man squad, 38-man squad, 39-man squad, you see where I'm going with this? They could. I think Thomas Ahern is the type of player you get in there. There is an argument, a counter argument that I will agree with that maybe having Baird, Izuchuku, and Ahern is too much. Understandably, I can absolutely go along with that if that's what someone wanted to kind of go down. But if you were to compare Thomas Ahern to Cormac Izuchuku, it's largely Izuchuku, and I'm just kind of looking at the stats here. Like, he's had more carries, more tackles completed, more defenders beaten, more touches. Like, he's really dominating in the stats line. It's just a case of, which way would you have gone? I would have went with Izuchuku and Ahern. And I think the most baffling standpoint, and I know this isn't great for a visual podcast or for an audio podcast. But Cormac is a true crew versus Ryan Baird in stats this year. Ryan Baird, more line out takes, that's to be expected. Is a true crew leads on tackles completed, carries, tries, line breaks, meters carried, defenders beaten, touches, post contact meters, and tackles made. My word, like this is a man in form. The remarkable thing is though, and if you're not Irish or if you're coming to this channel from somewhere else or seeing it on my Twitter page or seeing it on your YouTube, you'd think, wow, Cormac Izuchuku, he's the guy to back. Chances are we're going to see Ryan Baird on the bench. And this is where, Irish fans are looking at it and they're saying, same old, same old, very stagnant, very samey. These are the changes that Irish fans want to see because they're watching the URC. And we'll go on to a little bit later on with the training panel. At what point does the URC form just look like it does not matter, despite the fact that that's the league that everyone is playing in and is probably the best litmus test? But we'll move on. We'll move on to scrum half and out half next. So the scrum halves that have been named are James Gibson Park, Conor Murray, and Keelan Blade. And at out half, it is Jack Crowley, Sam Prendergast, and Kieran Frawley. My apologies. So Gibson Park, Murray, Crowley, Prendergast, and probably Frawley to agree, pick themselves. I don't think there's any real controversy there in terms of who picks what or whatever else. The interesting thing in terms of Kieran Frawley, he's only played 5 games this year, or 6, if you include the Ireland New Zealand game. He's not got a lot of minutes this year, which is remarkable to think about, because it feels like that he was the man of the hour. Jack Crowley was the out half that won a Six Nation Championship with Ireland this time last year. Looks like he's going to be cast aside to the bench, despite, you could talk about that one for hours. Sam Prendergast is the golden child at the moment. We'll see how that goes. Ireland are going to back him. Would not be surprised to see him on the Lions tour. We'll wait and see on that one. Gibson Park will be on the Lions tour if he's fit. Conor Murray, wouldn't rule it out. I don't think the scrum half depth is massively exciting. Gibson Park had to be there. Murray had to be there. Conor Murray's performance against Arsenal the weekend, excellent, top notch. Jack Crowley had to be there. Sam Prendergast had to be there. Keelan Blade, I'm a fan of Keelan Blade, but I think this is again, when you're looking at that squad and you're looking at who's the scrum halves, you see Keelan Blade in there. You don't see Ben Murphy. Okay, Ben Murphy's in the training panel, and I have my gripes around training panels and things like that. Anyways, as is, but you see him in there. You don't see Ben Murphy. You don't see Nathan Doak. Guys who are starters for their province. And I think, yes, Keelan Blade makes sense if you're going, oh, we better get an experienced head in there. But like James Gibson Park is one of the best scrum halves in the world. Conor Murray is Ireland's greatest ever scrum half. They didn't need a experienced head. Like, so is it about form? Is it about system? Is it about winning games? Like, there's absolutely nothing stopping you from naming Ben Murphy, and then if Gibson Park or Murray goes down, calling up Keelan Blade quicker than, then he can get into his car. Like there's nothing stopping you from doing that, and that's where I think the confusion lies. Is like Connacht now are without 2 scrum halves for their game against Glasgow, but one of them hasn't a notion of getting picked for Ireland. Like Ben Murphy's not going to get picked. He's in that training panel. He's not going to get picked unless there's an injury. There could well be one, but that's where provincial fans in particular have every right to be aggrieved. I think Murray has to be the number 2. I think Craig Casey's form. He was probably the form scrum half of the 3 of Gibson Park, Murray, and Casey before he got injured. But with Conor Murray, what he showed the weekend, I think he has to be there. And I think the thing with Conor Murray is, and a lot of people don't like this, but if he's going to play, he kind of has to get 20, 30 minutes. It's very hard for a player of 35 years of age to come in and be brilliant for 10 minutes. Because that was never his game. He's not rapid quick. He's not, he reads a game. He has to figure it out, He has to get up to the pace of the game. And people don't like that, but it's the way I would go. I would start Crowley over Prendergast. They will start Prendergast over Crowley. There's no point discussing it, to be honest. I think, look, Ireland were crying out for a 10 who was a little bit more athletic than Sexton or than a Ross Byrne, maybe a better kicker than Billy Burns, or looking for someone who was, getting more provincial minutes than, say, Harry Byrne. They had all of that. Now they realise something's going wrong. Let's change the 10. I would prefer to change a prop, or not starting prop, but subs. I would prefer to change maybe at second row or at 6. They went with 10, so be it. Onto the midfield. Bundy Aki, Robbie Henschel, Gary Ringrose. the mainstays of Ireland squads basically since about 2018, 2017. Bundy won his Ireland debut actually. So they've been the mainstays. They're always going to be there. Bundy and Henshaw for me are the starters. Gary Ringrose played well at the weekend against La Rochelle, but I think what we've seen from Robbie Henshaw, he's in terrific form. I thought Bundy was really, really good against Fiji. Got man of the match that day, actually. Got player of the match that day. And was really grown into it in the Australia game. I feel like Ireland will go with Aki and Ringrose, and Henshaw will miss out, but I think Henshaw's form is too good. I wouldn't have him missing out. And look, you have to make a tough decision somewhere, but for me, I would be going with Henshaw. I also think there's also an element of if you're going with Sam Prendergast, he's going to need a little bit more protection. Going with Bundy and Henshaw is just that little bit more. And like that does take a toll across 70, 80 minutes, 60 minutes, whatever it is. Aki and Henshaw, they work well together. There's no wrong pairing, there's no wrong answer. I would go with Bundy Aki and Robbie Henshaw. But I think it'll be Aki and Ringrose. Back three then. Mac Hansen, he will be back from his suspension. Not going to touch on that one. There's been enough said about it. Look, all I'm going to say is I feel like Mac Hansen has every right to say what he feels. I feel like the URC have every right to address that whatever way they see fit. I also think the Mac Hansen stuff was blown out of proportion to a massive degree. You remove the curse words from what he said, it's actually not that bad of an argument. It's one of those things. Flower language and tone changes everything. James Lowe has not played for Ireland or has not featured in a rugby game, I believe, since the November. I'm just looking for it here now. So James Lowe, his last game for Leinster was in round 6 of the URC. So that was pre-November. So he hasn't played a game of rugby since November. He's back in there. Calvin Nash, Jamie O'Brien probably looked at it as the other two wingers, especially with Jacob Stockdale sidelined with an injury. O'Brien, not a like for like fit, but he's got the left boot. Jamie Osborne and Hugo Keane, and then from here, the two fullbacks. They could look at Osborne as a kind of hybrid power winger with a big left boot, who can defend really well off the edge. But I think if Lowe doesn't make the first game, I think you have to go with Nash and Hansen. Because I actually think Calvin Nash again had a really good game against Saracens the weekend, and ultimately, like as much as we talk about the URC games, you can judge teams on URC or whatever, but if you're playing well against Saracens or against La Rochelle, that should be worth more. And I think for Calvin Nash, that's what he's going to be hoping. Having not got a single minute in the autumn, if James Lowe's not back fit, you would expect him to start, but we'll wait and see. Hugo Keenan is expected to feature for Leinster this weekend, having travelled to La Rochelle with the squad. If not, I think you go with Osborne at 15. I think Osborne, again, big left boot, pretty strong, good defender. Don't think you can argue with that. The training panel. Here's where you get a little bit more controversy. So Ben Murphy, as I said, could very easily have been in the main squad. A lot of people would have had him in their main squad, including myself. James McNabney, terrific form. Young guy. I think he's probably the youngest of this. No, he would be older than. Maybe it's the same squad as Hugh Cooney. I'm not 100% sure. But he's been brilliant in the URC. I just get his exact breakdown of how many games he has played so far this season if you just give me a moment. So, James McNabney has featured for Ulster 8 times already this season. 7 of those starts, 2 of those in the Champions Cup. I'm not 100% sure as to which of the Champions Cup games he missed, but he missed the Bordeaux game, actually, which was probably Ulster's best performance, ironically enough, but not related. He's in there. Carl Ford is in there. No real surprise. Again, what is he, 24, 25, good centre, starter for Connacht, the kind of player that Connacht is building around in the long term. And Hugh Cooney. Firstly, congratulations to all those lads. They're all uncapped. They're all young guys. I don't think any of them have had an official call up as of yet. So, in that regard, that's good to see what the training panel has been used for. The only issue I would have in it is a lot of people, even the most devout rugby fans, are going to look at it and say, I know McNabney played really well against Munster. I know Carl Ford has been playing really well for Connacht. I know who's the fourth one? Ben Murphy. Yeah, everyone knows who Ben Murphy is. He's been unbelievable. Hugh Cooney, very good young player. For anyone who hasn't noticed him, played in the under-20 team that went to the World Cup final alongside Sam Prendergast, Brian Gleeson, Gus McCarthy, Ron Quinn, John Devine, so on and so forth. Evan O'Connell was in that squad as well. But he has played 2 games for Leinster this season, one as a start, one off the bench. So he hasn't got a huge amount of minutes. If you want to be nitpicky, you could look at, you know, Liam Turner has more, Jordan Armour obviously has more. Um, Andrew Osborne, who a lot of people had in their squad actually, he's got more minutes. Zach Ward has more minutes. Murray Telfer has more appearances. He only has one start though. Shane Jennings has more appearances. Shane Mullins of Connacht. Um, Piers O'Connor, who I believe there's some controversy. Maybe he's not actually Irish qualified after all. That's just a rumour, though. I wouldn't believe it until it comes true. Shane Bolton is injured. You'd imagine he'd have been in there. So I can see why rugby fans look at these and go, well, you already have 20 Leinster players, and now you got another one who hasn't really featured. And it's nothing against the guy. Like, he's a very talented rugby player. I'm sure he'll enjoy the experience of going over to, I believe it's Portugal that Ireland do their campaign. But it's just that element of, from an outside perspective, kind of like with the Tom Ahern thing being edged out, or even Jude Postlethwaite, who has been arguably one of the best provincial players in the URC this season. He's a no Sturm McCluskey half the season. James Hugh hasn't played yet, and he has stepped up to the mantle, and he's been absolutely excellent. He's been left out. He's not been listed here. If he doesn't get named in the A team to play England, I won't know what to say. And that kind of brings me nicely into the omissions. So obviously I mentioned Thomas Ahern earlier and did that little comparison between the two. Jude Postlethwaite. Look, Jude Postlethwaite was in my I did a piece for both IE in terms of uncapped bolters where I'd have thereabouts. Postlethwaite was one of them. He's been in unbelievable form. Should be thereabouts. Ollie Jaeger, look, he's had a few injuries, but I think there's a case to be made that Ireland need to move on from one of Furlong, Beelum, well, probably two of Furlong, Beelum, Healy. Furlong signed a central contract. Healy's going to retire. Maybe they'll say that's enough. But for me, with Scott Wilson coming through, Tom O'Toole is still young. Ollie Jaeger's younger than Beelum. He's probably the one that I would probably have moved aside. And my only concern is I go back to that summer tour where Ireland's scrum was demolished, vaporized, given their wings, whatever you want to call it, whatever old parlance that they use. Jaeger is not that. He had a really good showing at the weekend. Beelum, I understand why they gone back to him. Kind of like Healy, kind of like Herring, kind of like Henderson, O'Mahony, Murray, James Lowe, Bundy, so on and so forth. This is what Ireland do. They go back to the same mold. Like Ireland, this Ireland selection is more conservative than parts of the deep south in America. That's just what we've become accustomed to at this stage. Alex Candellen is another one I've listed in the omissions list. I think he definitely could have been thereabouts. He captained the Emerging Ireland Tour, got into the extended squad, or training panel for the autumn. Was one of the only players in that training panel in the autumn who did not feature on match day of any given day, which was harsh in my opinion. I think he's a good role swap for Josh Van der Fleer, not like for like, but a good role swap. He's still young. He's still only 23. Like, still a very young kid. Nathan Doak, I'd have had thereabouts as well, I think. Again, good form. He's won the starting shirt. His form seems to be getting better despite Ulster's form. I've got Dave McCann in there. Again, another one of that Ulster forwards, along with Izuchukwu and along with McNabney, playing really, really well. Nick Timley, I don't have him listed here, but Nick Timley has been outrageous. Now, I didn't have Nick Timley in my Ireland squad for anyone who may have seen on social media. My rationale was 2023, didn't get a single call up, didn't get capped. 2024 was in every squad, didn't get capped. I didn't want to see the same thing happen again. That's a waste of a call up. Your only concern is the chance maybe Prendergast or Izuchukwu or Baird, at least one, if not two of those, don't give a single minute in the Six Nations. That would be the only concern on that one. And Tom Farrell, I kind of have to mention him. Look, you could have easily went with Jude Postlethwaite in there. Could have put Carl Ford in there as a centre in the main squad, but Tom Farrell is another one. Like, you could make a case that Tom Ahern, Jude Postlethwaite, well, Tom Ahern obviously missed a couple of games, but Jude Postlethwaite and Tom Farrell are probably the two best provincial players in the URC this season. And I don't think many people would argue with you over that. And neither of them are in the squad. Tom Farrell makes a little bit more sense. He's over 30. Jude Postlethwaite is 23. 22, maybe. I'm not 100% sure. I think he's the same age as Alex Candellen. If not a year younger. Like, just make it make sense. That's all I'm saying. Just make it make sense. Does the URC matter? Does it not? It feels like it doesn't. This is obviously a squad that many people have seen the numbers. predominantly Leinster. I think it's like 24 Leinster, 7 Connacht, 5 Munster, 4 Ulster, something like that. That's an issue. And if you can't see that as being an issue, I have nothing to say because ultimately my concern would be when you go roll the dice on one team to keep on winning, the wins will run out. That's what happened to England in 2020. They got that last Six Nations. The Saracen squad fell apart with age and with, salary cap. And then England fell apart. And they haven't been the same since. I think there's more depth in Irish rugby than there is in English rugby. But my concern is that we'll end up going the same direction. Because in my opinion, if you want to look to, and it shouldn't be about Leinster versus the rest, but if you want to look to non-Leinster alternatives, and I will include a few injured players in this just because, I kind of have to. For some positions, could have Jeremy Luckman in there very easily, could have Dave Heffernan in there, you could have Ollie Jaeger, you could have Tom Ahern, obviously possibly Ahern, Caelan Doris, McCann, Farrell, all of them. You could have maybe, oh, well, Harry Burns at Bristol now, but we'll include Harry Byrne for this one. You could very easily, as I said, Tom Farrell and Drew Postlewaite in the centre. You could have Shane Daly in the back three, Gavin Coombs, John Hodnett in the back row. I haven't even mentioned. There's really no point mentioning them at this stage. Like the quality is there. Like don't try and bluff a bluffer. Like the quality is there. I firmly believe it, and I do think this Ireland squad is good enough to win a championship. I think they're going to benefit massively from the fact that France have to go to Dublin and have to go to England. France do not win Six Nations. They've won one Six Nations. I think Russ Petty had it up that they've won one Six Nations in this slate of those two away games being their two toughest away games. So history says France won't do it. England have players dropping like flies, and I mean that with the greatest respect to them. They are injuries. They're not, dropping out because they don't want to play. So, yeah, it's same old, same old. One new cap. Congratulations to Jack Boyle, to Hugh Cooney, to call forward to James McAnally, and to Ben Murphy, who are the uncapped players in the 40. Even at that, even with our training panel, whether you agree with that or not, that's still less than France. That's the thing. And that's what, it's not just me who's saying this. There's loads of Irish fans saying this. This will be probably a theme of the coverage as we cover every single game, as well as the under 26 nations, as well as the women's Six Nations. It's probably going to be a theme across the coming weeks. Ireland's squad is too small, it's too old, they haven't evolved. There is a sense of stagnation about this Irish team, in how they lost to New Zealand, and how they limped over the line against Argentina and Australia. And it feels like there's not much evolution. There was an evolution at 10 that hasn't worked so far, probably not, probably didn't need to happen. Probably one of those where you often see it, soccer teams losing, they chuck off, they chuck in a striker. It's like, but your defense is leaky. You got to address the issues. For Ireland, the issues of set piece hasn't been hectic. They are losing the power game more and more as the years go on. So yeah, there's all of that. Just before we go, the fixtures for Ireland, and again, we will cover every single one of these games on the podcast. But we start with England at home in round one. Then it's away to Scotland in Merrifield on the Sunday of round two. Wales away in round three, which has the following day, Ireland Day, play England Day in Bristol after round three. France at home on the 8th of March in round four, and then the following Saturday, Italy away to hopefully be trying to go for a championship. I'm going to say 4 wins from 5 for Ireland. I think they're going to win the championship. And I've just realised I have to do a predictions video later on, and I may have spoiled that. Anyways, I think Ireland will win the championship. I think the fact that France have to go away twice is going to be the differentiator. Scotland can beat anyone on their day, but until they beat Ireland on their day, I cannot believe that they can. France, as I said, they have to go away from home. Wales, England they probably have the squad and they have the power game. It's just do they have the consistency. The consistency of getting over the line and consistency of performance are two different things. They got edged by Australia and by New Zealand. Obviously, they limped past Ireland. They got eked out by France last year. Got well beat by Scotland. We need to see that they're able to go on a run. And the Six Nations is literally, it's it's a bit of tete-a-tete. It's a bit of, shadow boxing to a degree. You got to go 1, 2, 3, 4 and just reel off the wins. I don't think England can. So for me, it's a 3-horse race. And off that, I think it's a 2-horse race where in a championship where home advantage is massive. I think it's going to go the way of Ireland. So that's all we have time for this evening's show. I hope you have enjoyed it. As always, the Caelan Rugby podcast will be your go-to pod for all things Six Nations here in Ireland for fan-led coverage. Across the next 12 weeks, we will have unrivaled coverage of the men's, the under-20s and the women's championships from an Irish perspective. If you do like what you see here, please do subscribe, and you can find all the links for all of my channels down below. I'll be back very soon with Champions Cup coverage as well as preview of the men's and under-20s championships. But for now, and until next time, take it easy.